What's up, YouTube? Welcome back to another video. In this video, I want to talk about some comments that Dr. Brittney Cooper made in an interview some months back in probably like fall 2021. And you may or may not know who Dr. Brittney Cooper is. She's a professor of women's and gender studies as well as Africana studies at Rutgers University. And she attended Howard University for undergrad, and she majored in English and political science. And she also acquired a PhD in American Studies from Emory University. And she specializes in Black feminist thought, hip-hop studies, race and gender representation in popular culture, and digital feminism. And she has over 50,000 followers on Instagram and over 150,000 followers on Twitter. So that's a little bit more about Brittney. I first found out about Dr. Brittney Cooper through a program on Oprah Winfrey's network called Black Women Own the Conversation. And in this program, Brittney, she gave her thoughts and opinions about Black women, diet, exercise, and losing weight. And I'm going to share that audio clip with you right quick.
So I actually want us to hold up a little bit before we do this thing where we start blaming ourselves. Like, I hate when people talk about Black women being obese. I hate it because it becomes a way to blame us for a set of conditions that we didn't create. We're moving, we're taking care of kids, but our food quality suffers. We are living in the Trump era. And look, those policies kill our people. You can't get access to good health care, good insurance. The research says that Black women, when we do the same diets as white women, we lose less weight and we lose it slower, even when we're following the diet, than our white women counterparts. And what public health practitioners think is that our stress responses in the body change our metabolism. It's literally that the racism that you're experiencing and the struggle to make ends meet actually means the diet don't work for you the same.
So that's how I first found out about Brittney. And what she said was interesting. I can't say that I 100% agree with it, but I understand the spirit of what she's saying. And I've kind of been interested in hearing more of what she has to say. For some reason, I think I may have ended up running across her again at one point or another. I actually ended up doing a video sharing her thoughts and opinions about Black men who were supporting Donald Trump during the recent presidential election. But the reason that I'm making this video is more or less to pretty much defend Dr. Brittney Cooper, because she has received some backlash. It's not very recent, but it's somewhat recent, right? Within the last probably like 6 months. But what happened was she went on a platform called The Root, and she did an interview. And in this interview, she said some things about, like, the system of white supremacy and white people, and some people, white people, but also some Black people even on YouTube have posted videos pretty much more or less condemning what Brittney said in the interview. And the interview ended up, or at least parts of the interview ended up going somewhat viral. And the interview itself is about 45 minutes, and the clips that went viral are more about 5 minutes. So what I'm going to do is play the video clip, or rather an audio clip, just in case folks want to come for me, of some of the things that she said in the interview. And this audio clip is about a little over 5 minutes long. Of course, as I mentioned, the interview itself, where it came from, is about 45 minutes. And I'll leave a link to that interview in the description if you're interested in hearing more about what Brittney has to say.
I think that white people are committed to being villains in the aggregate, right? The real sort of issue here, and I've heard people sort of say it, is one, I think that white people viscerally fear. It's not that white people don't know, right, what they have done. They know. They fear that there is no other way to be human but the way in which they are human, which is to, so, like you talk to white people, and whenever you really want to have a reckoning about it, they say stuff like, it's just human nature. If y'all had all of this power, you would have done the same thing, right? And it's like, no, that's what white humans did. White human beings thought there's a world here and we own it. Prior to them, Black and brown people have been sailing across oceans, interacting with each other for centuries without total subjugation, domination, and colonialism. Right? We have seen what a show this iteration of treatment of other human beings means, and that my hope is that we would do it differently, in the moments when we have some power. We will not do it perfectly, but I do think that all of us can sort of agree that a politics that says like there are superior and inferior human beings just isn't the way to go. And that's the thing that white people don't trust us to do, because they are so corrupt. Their thinking is so morally and spiritually bankrupt about power that they can't they fear viscerally, existentially letting go of power, because they cannot imagine that there's another way to be. It is either that you dominate or you are dominated. And isn't it sad that is spiritually who they are, and that they can't imagine a sort of more expansive notion of the world? The thing I want to say to you is we got to take these motherfuckers out. But we can't say that, right? We can't say, I don't believe in a project of violence. I truly don't. Because I think in the end that our souls suffer from that. And I do think that some of this is a spiritual condition. So here is where I land most days about white people. And I actually have been helped in this by thinking about indigenous people, right? See, part of the challenge around whiteness is that it totally skews our view of everything, right? I gave this TED talk about this some years back, and one of the reasons I was trying to think about it is the world didn't start when white people arrived in America and tried to tell all the rest of us how things were going to go. There were people out here making worlds, Africans and indigenous people being brilliant, and, libraries and inventions and, vibrant notions of humanity and cross-cultural exchange long before white people showed up being raggedy and violent and terrible and trying to take everything from everybody. And that's really important, because if we believe that history starts for us when white people drag us to these shores, then we can never get outside of the notion that this is going to be our existential struggle. All things that begin end. White folks are not infinite and eternal, right? They ain't gonna go on for infinity and infinity. And that's super important to remember, that white colonialism and imperialism has a beginning. And in my way of thinking about the world, that means it has an end. And so part of what we are trying to do is to imagine what are the steps that we must take to get to the other side of this very inconvenient, epochal interruption of Black and indigenous world making. I mean, does that give people comfort on the day to day when you just having to deal with white folks and the travesties that they create and the sense that they want to destroy the planet? Nah, there is a world beyond even our sojourn on the earth. And so whiteness is going to have an end date, because it is not, despite what white people think of themselves, they do not defy the laws of eternity, right? Their projects are not so sophisticated that the natural laws of physics change for them. And when we sort of humble them in humble our own understandings of whiteness. It seems like the biggest giant that we face, but in the end, right, it is what I like to say is, black folks were out here for centuries and centuries and millennia doing all kinds of wonderful things, and probably some up things too, but whiteness is largely an inconvenient interruption. And so we then get to ask ourselves, so why am I here in this moment of it? Like, damn, why did I show up in this particular iteration? And it's like, well, I think we showed up in this iteration precisely so that we could help to figure out an end and a way to the other side of this, gargantuan historical tragedy that is white supremacy.
All right, so you heard what Dr. Brittney Cooper had to say. And, I can understand why some white people who are not woke would be offended by hearing that. But of course, I think that Brittney is speaking collectively, not individually, since, there is a system at play of white supremacy. And, she had mentioned that white people are committed to being villains. And you have to think about it for a minute. And by the way, this probably is going to end up coming off as a bit like racism 101, a bit of a warning for you there. But you have to think about it for a second. In black people's story and narrative within America, if black people are the protagonists, who would be the antagonists? And it's probably the same for brown people in America as well. But then again, let me not speak for other. Another thing that came up is that Brittney had hinted pretty much white people being afraid of giving up power, giving up control, because then essentially they would be vulnerable to more or less the same violence that they have perpetuated against other groups of people. And when you really think about it, is there really an incentive for white people to give up their position? And I don't really think there is an incentive for white people to really give up their position and to do away with the system of white supremacy. At best, they may end up lighting up on the system a little bit, and that may just be for looks, to look like they are, just people. Perhaps it's a feeling of remorse in some sense. Feeling bad, feeling guilty. And that's the thing too, where it's like, perhaps you may feel bad, you may feel guilty, but also you're afraid of life beyond the system, life outside of the system, especially if that's all you know. And of course, afraid of groups of people seeking revenge and seeking vengeance. And those groups of people being just in their vengeance and revenge. Something else that Brittney brought up is that she said that white people feel like, it's basically, what they have done is basically just human nature. And that if other groups were in the same position, they would have done the same thing. Do you think that is true? I think there is some truth in it, but I don't think it's 100% true. I do think that perhaps other groups would have positioned themselves to be at the top of the hierarchy, but they may not have went about it exactly the same way in terms of like the campaign of violence against other groups of people, at least to the same extent. But ultimately, this is speculation and conjecture on my part. Another thing that Brittney mentioned is that seemingly more or less she's saying that black and brown people have more or less lived in harmony with each other before white people got involved in things. And, to be fair, war and conquest have been around way before 1492. That's true. So do I think there is, some, black and brown utopia that could have been? Well, perhaps it could have been, but I don't think it actually was as idyllic and idealistic, or rather, as picturesque as she's putting it. But on the other hand, I think that, white imperialism and colonialism and colonization, I think it took war and conquest to the next level. And right now, as I speak, I think we're really seeing modern day colonization in action, or at least the attempt of it in action with the Russian-Ukraine conflict that's going on right now. Brittney also talked about a politic of there being inferior and superior beings, and that not being the way to go. I think, we all should agree with that. But, I will put this out there, if black people were in a position to posture themselves and to position themselves as superior being while other people are being inferior and seen as inferior, would they take the opportunity to do so? Should they take that opportunity to do so? Brittney also mentions that white people are afraid of letting go of power because for them, it's either you dominate or be dominated. Do you think there is some truth in that? And I think, I do think that there is some truth in that. And as I mentioned earlier, what is the incentive for white people to let go of power? What do they get from that? And that is the question when we have these conversations about, racism, power, authority, laws, who governs what, etc. That's something that doesn't get brought up. And I think that is sort of like maybe something that people really don't want to talk about. Something that really, people really don't want to touch. Because to answer that question, I'm not sure what white people really get out of letting go of power. Other than to perhaps, make amends for things that have going on in the past, injustices and travesties in the past and present, and to prevent them from happening in the future, at least by their hands. But I really don't think that's enough for white people to voluntarily give up their position. And then she goes in to say, we got to take these MFers out. And based on white people not wanting to voluntarily give up, power, position, authority, etc. Well, what would be the other option if you wanted to obtain some power, authority, positionality, etc.? You would essentially have to remove the person or group of people in power or in the position that you want to be in and put yourself in that position. But, Brittney, she is not advocating for violence against white people. She mentioned and said herself that she does not believe in a project of violence. And I know some people kind of want to follow the belief of by any means necessary, which would include violence. Not everybody, but some people. Is violence necessary to make a change? Not always, but if you go back through history, violence has been used to make social changes. I mean, the Civil War ended up making a big social change. We still feel the effects of that war till today, like right now. But I can understand where Brittney is coming from, where she had mentioned that she feels like your spirit, your soul may end up suffering in a way. And I can understand that, whereas like you want to be careful about how you obtain things. And also, karma is a thing, Some people believe in it, some people don't. But I think when it comes to white people, I think that they feel like they have karma coming their way, and because of that, that's part of the reason why they have the mindset of fear that they do in terms of other groups of people and power, authority, dominance, etc. But at the end of the day, if karma wants you, karma's going to get you. And the thing is, it'll be like a thief in the night. You won't even see it coming. And I can also understand where it's like, we as black people, we want to make sure we have like a good legacy and a good history where perhaps we don't have to, participate in revisionist history and make things seem like one way when they really were not that way, and just tell straight up lies. Because you know that the truth would not make you look good. The real, true, dirty truth, ugly truth. Another point that Brittney brought up was history, and how oftentimes it is, when it comes to black people, at least in America or the Americas, it's like history for black people began once they were taken by force to the Americas and enslaved. Like, that's where history begins. And typically when it comes to the American school system, that tends to be where it starts. It doesn't, like the history for black people, they don't go back beyond slavery, before the transatlantic slave trade happened. Why? Do you think it was purposely orchestrated for black people in the Americas not to know their full history? Or do you think that this is just the way that it happened? I think it is the former. And Brittney also points out that, as we all know, white people and whiteness is not infinite, it's not eternal, it does not exist outside of time and space. It is governed by the laws of physics, just like everybody else, right? I think we can all agree with that. But, if you're living in a system of white supremacy, then you may end up becoming brainwashed to think that that is not true. I hope this isn't something that the white people who took issues with what she said had a problem with her saying this. To put it simply, everything has a start and everything has an end. And the system of white supremacy, it has a start, we all know that, and it does have an end. We just don't know when that end is going to be. But there is an end to it. I wonder how it will end, though. I wonder how the system will end up ending exactly. A bit of a sidebar, but I've heard some people speculate that white people are not indigenous to the planet Earth, and that white people are from outer space somewhere. They are alien to the planet Earth. I don't think that is true, but I think some people may feel that way because they feel like maybe white people don't have a connection with the Earth, seemingly as much as black and brown people or like African and indigenous people do. But that's my, take on what Brittney had to say. And, once this started to make its rounds on the internet, folks had, people, especially white people, they didn't like it, right? They didn't like what Brittney said. They felt that what she said was, racist, bigoted, mean-spirited. There were some people who were challenging the validity in terms of facts versus opinions that she was saying. And there were people calling for her to be fired from her teaching position at Rutgers University because of this. Do I personally think that Brittney is racist? No, I don't think Brittney or Dr. Cooper is in the power to really be racist. But some people could speculate that perhaps she could be racist in terms of being a teacher at Rutgers, being a professor at Rutgers, and perhaps giving maybe special treatment to black students versus white students, maybe grading white students a bit harder. Perhaps that's speculation. But I don't think that's true. Is a bigot? No, I don't really think she is bigoted. I think that she is venting and expressing just maybe her frustrations. And also, at the end of the day, even if she was racist and bigoted, I really don't think any white person has anything to really worry about. Because she's not in a position to really affect white people's quality of life in any way. Now, when we hear white people talking in a very bigoted and racist way, yeah, it does get people on edge. It does get people worried because, as history has shown, like, that type of rhetoric can lead to violence, as well as like laws being put in place to severely limit Black people and other people of color's access to resources, job opportunities, educational opportunities, housing, business loans. But I don't want to go on for too long, so I'm going to bring this video to a close. So thank you very much for watching. Please let me know what you think about all of this in the comments section below. And until the next video, adios and goodbye for now. I guess one more thing I can mention. I think ultimately this ends up just circling around to and boiling down to Dr. Brittney Cooper making white people feel bad. But I'll put it like this. The Black people who do have problems with white people and feel a certain way about white people, it's usually motivated by what white people have done as a collective, and perhaps on an individual level, but definitely as a collective. While I think, on the other hand, when it comes to white people, it's more so, it can come off as if white people don't like Black people just because they're Black. And, you know, as we know, like, anti-Blackness is like the foundation of, you know, American culture. You know, it's as American as apple pie. And it's also like the foundation of white supremacy. But that's all that I have to say. Please let me know what you have to say about all this in the comment section below. Until the next video, adios and goodbye for now.